Let us pray. O God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight. You are strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, here I stand on a trapeze. That's a line from one of the preaching conferences I attended many years ago. That was the descriptor for those of us who, or any of us, who attempt to do this thing that we call sharing the spoken word and all that we bring with us into this week. It's been a journey, not just for me, but I'm conscious it's been a journey for all of you over this last little while. Don't you love being on a journey? You don't have to love it. There's probably complaints that you experience as well as we journey. But I've always found it refreshing. Still to this day, it's not about the journey of all those that I encounter in life and the stories I know in this universe, but it's the stories of our ancestors that speak to me as well and that teach me so much, that help me to continue putting one foot in front of the other with all that I encounter in life. And I don't need these to read. It's great to be here for both Linda and I. And it's been a journey in its own way, and I'm going to share some of that journey with you this morning so you have a bit more of an understanding for some of you who don't know me, and even perhaps for some of you who do know me, because I'm sure I'll share something I've never shared before. But you know that I'm from Kingston, Ontario. This is where I was born and raised and spent a good part of my life along with Linda. We're both from Kingston, Ontario. I was the Scottish Protestant boy raised in the United Church of Canada. And eventually, when a young Irish Roman Catholic girl at a young age moved up into the neighborhood I lived in, she moved next door. She was only in grade 6 then, and I had my eye on her from that time, and she would have nothing to do with me. So just a bit of an aside on that. Eventually I asked her, and I know some of you will recall, so we're dating ourselves. She was wandering with her girlfriends by my house because I was always peeking out the window at her. I said, "Linda, could you do me a favor? If you're heading downtown, would you stop into the House of Sounds and pick me up a copy of Brown-Eyed Girl by Van Morrison?" Because she would never do anything at all, pay attention to me. She said yes, she would. And she returned with that single. And the minute she did and she gave it to me, I knew I had her. Now you can talk to her after and she can tell you, I'm sure, a different story. But that's my memory. So anyways, that's who we are and where we're from. And I was ordained here at Queen's Theological School. It was the natural place for me to go. My journey into ministry was from out of the business world, and it took me 10 years to do 6 years full-time university because I had to work full-time for some of those years. And so was ordained in 1985 and have gallivanted across the provinces of Canada, starting out in Bonnyville, Alberta, as the ordinand charge, spending a great deal of time for a while in the GTA region, then out to Vancouver for a period of time, 4 years. I still don't understand why I ever allowed God to call me back to the GTA, but it happened. And back here in Kingston for a bit, as some of you will know, back in the GTA, and sorry, but here I am again. And it's good to be here. Now, I don't usually preach from the lectionary in a regular fashion. I gave that up a few years ago for all kinds of reasons you can talk to me about afterwards. But I thought I would check out the lectionary readings for today. And my, what did I find? To my surprise, this gospel reading from Mark's gospel. It fits my story to a T, and I bet it fits all of our stories on some levels to a T. So who are you? Jesus is the question that gets asked by many on the outside of the church, and even some of us on the inside of the church, even today, still. Not unlike Peter and the disciples, I happen to think that's a good question to be asking all the time. But I like most what author Shane Hipps in his fascinating book, Flickering Pixels, How Technology Shapes Faith, says when he describes this gospel like this. It's a conversion that can feel a lot like a light switch that has been flipped on and off, and eventually, suddenly, everything becomes illuminated. And even still a different kind of conversion that can feel like a gradual brightening of a long darkness or a long fade from clarity into doubt. Mark's gospel. Well, Peter has been experiencing that up to this day and time as one reads the gospel. He's been stumbling and struggling, and it almost appears like now the light switch is helping him to see things in a different way. He has a moment of clarity. We too, I think, will find Jesus in both the darkness and the light in life, in both those sudden epiphanies and unhurried evolutionary experiences. I can tell you that my journey in ministry, for me, and at least from where I stand, and I can only speak from my experience, has been stumbling, struggling, celebratory, energizing, mind-boggling, full of doubt, loads of questions, and you know what? All of that, even as I stand here in front of you, I can say, still happens for me. And I celebrate that because I can tell you my wife doesn't like this, but I like risk. I like the great unknown. I like mystery. I like asking the questions constantly. And as quick as I get an answer to any question I have, all throughout my ministry, I have another question. It provokes another question and causes me to seek something. Now, have I always liked that? Do I always like that? No, I don't. I would prefer on some days to have concrete answers, and I'd like to be able to stand still for a short while, and I find I'm able to do even that sometimes. But my ministry experience has carried me in the United Church of Canada to different congregations who all bring their own stories, which are rich and full of life, and stories of struggle in trying to discern how the Spirit is calling them out in the time that they find themselves in their life, to discern what the next steps in ministry might be. How is the Holy One calling us at this time? to imagine what the future might be for us in ministry. Now, I could tell you that already in the short time I've spoken. I know some might think it's long, but it's short. Do you have any idea how many skin cells have already died on your body and new ones have produced? That, I think, you can look that up on Google. That's what ministry for us in the church is to be like. A long time ago, I remember in my second year of theology, that is a long time ago now, it seems, we were talking about this thing called death and resurrection. I won't go into the details, but one of the things that I've often thought of in ministry, and it's been a profound experience, how we in the life and the work of the church, I still am not sure that we buy what the story of resurrection can mean for us. I know that we all have a variety of different interpretations what resurrection means. And the reason I say that is because I don't think we're prepared to let go and to die to things. Because if we are prepared to die to things, we do so knowing, at least trusting and risking, that there will always be new life. There's always new life of some kind. That's the evolutionary story that takes place in the universe every single day. And you or I can't stop it. We can try, but you can't stop it. It lives and it breathes constantly. You can't even get in the way of it. That's the bad news for you and for me as we try to imagine what it's like and what can it be like. A new ministry in a new time for Sydenham Street and for Chalmers in this neck of the woods of the universe. My journey has taught me that people will spit and chew and argue and push around and jump up and down and celebrate and be happy and all of those good things, and that's just what we do as human beings. But my journey with congregations has also taught me how important it is to be silent for long periods of time and to be contemplative for long periods of time so that you can listen, so that you can hear what that new thing is that is giving its voice to rising, so that you can hear and be empathetic and sensitive to what those things are that we struggle with and wish could stay the same. It happens in every congregation I've been in. I hunch it happens here too. I could tell you all the struggles, and I could tell you of all the joys, but I can tell you of my experiences of being in places that took hold of the Spirit guiding them into those new places, and they are living and breathing and vibrant and alive. And guess what? Even millennials attend worship services. Oh, but millennials bring with them their gifts, their stories, their ideas that will shape things in new ways. And they can teach us so much. That's my experience. I don't know your experience. I will be sensitive because of what I've learned on my journey in ministry. And some of what I've learned, by the way, in ministry, I've picked up from some people who sit here this morning in this congregation, and I can see them. Oh, there's the Stan Lusick, and there's the Mac Freeman, and there's all kinds of different people here that I've learned a great deal from. So if you want to blame anybody for who I am and what I'm about, they probably don't remember what they taught me, but you can go to them, okay? That's my Peter coming out. I have had the richest time of my life, and I'll close off by sharing this in brief. When I was one of the 100 people who were chosen to journey over to England, I guess that's now almost 5 years ago, to the Greenbelt Conference. One of 100 United Church people to go over there and experience what's been going on for years, this religious experience, and how things were being shaped over there. And I can tell you that I learned and was surprised by things that were happening on the ground that are so radically different than you could ever imagine. And yet, it is still church. It is gospel being lived and breathed every day in new and dynamic ways. And it's all not about coming and sitting inside an old, by the way, remember I'm from Kingston. I can argue about limestone and architecture as good as anybody. But they're not attached to buildings, so they can be freed up and creative to do other things. It was an amazing experience like I had never had, and I can tell you that I was on the brink of almost ready to leave the church. I just mean the church. And when I went there, that experience literally saved my life. What I mean by that is saved my ability to stay in ministry because it provided me with a sense of the hope of what can be possible. That's the hope that I think we can all get to. As a community of faith, I ask you this morning, what do you expect of life as a follower of this Jesus today? Where does the path of your faith lead you today? You see, the summons to life and to this thing that we as Christians call discipleship is risky, is enlightening, is liberating, and it is always, always evolutionary in nature. I wonder, are you open to trusting? Are you open to risking? May it be so for you. May it be so for me.